Ejiri has already introduced me, so I'm not gonna spend any time doing that. But just to give you more context here, I've basically done everything within the data ecosystem, from data strategy, data op model, going down into your data management, analytics, data science, and data engineering. And that was why when Ediri mentioned that I should take this session, I had to say, yeah, I need to be narrowed down on a particular thing to talk about, because I can go on and on about this field. So I'm just going to go right into it and share my slide. 1 second. Okay. Just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, okay.
Okay, thank you. So just go straight into it. So in today's era of social media and content creation, yeah, you have a lot of people talking about a lot of things that they may or may not have any clue about, and they do that with a lot of authority. That's what you get with social media. And the downside of doing that is you have people mixing up a lot of things, and then there isn't a lot of clarity on what is exactly what. I've seen it a lot in the data sort of ecosystem, right? You see someone saying that they are a data analyst or they are a data engineer, but they don't know the difference between a data structure and a data type, right? Or you see someone saying that they are a data science, so they're a data scientist, but then if you ask them to differentiate between data science, machine learning, Gen AI, and AI, right, they start to stutter. So I have a knack of trying to explain things and be really exact on what I'm doing or what I'm talking about. So that's why I want to start this session by really being clear on what exactly data analytics is, so that for the people on the call that are probably trying to transition into this field, there isn't any confusion, there isn't any ambiguity. You know exactly where you're going into, right? And then when you go out there to probably start job hunting, you know the roles that you're going to look for, right? So in very simple, basic terms, right, data analytics is just the process of getting data, cleaning that data, and then trying to interpret or extract meaningful insights from that data. It's as simple as that. That's what data analytics is. So if you're having to look for data, you're having to organize it, and then you're having to try to get some insights, either to get trends or patterns, right? You're already doing data analytics. That's what data analytics is in a very simple sense. So now that we've sort of cleared the air on what data analytics is, would go straight into looking at what the responsibilities, right, of a data analyst. So if you are a data analyst, what are you expected to do? So one of the things that you're expected to do is that you source for data. And what that basically means is you go and find data, because you can be on a project and the business owner or the person that is sponsoring the project will tell you that we need to create a single source of truth, right? For example, in finance, we have lots of people maintaining data in multiple spreadsheets in different databases. But I need you to create this dashboard, right? This dashboard is going to show me everything that is happening within finance. So depending on the industry, right, or the company that you work for, you could have a data engineer, right? So it is the responsibility of the data engineer simply, right, is to create the infrastructure for you to get data. But if you don't have a data engineer in the company that you work for, you're going to have to do that yourself. If not, you would seem incompetent, right? So that's why I have that point of data sourcing. It's simply trying to get the data that you need to do your job, right? So when you get that data, the next thing you do is to try and cleanse that data. What that means is you take that data and put it into a shape that it's fit for your analytics, because the nature of data in its raw form, it's messy. That's the state, right? Messy in the sense that you have columns flying in different formats, in different ways. You have data errors coming in from multiple areas. So you need to sit down and ensure that you are organizing your data in the structure that is fit for analytics, right? And analytics in this sense, simply put, is creating visuals, right? All you do is to create visuals, to create reports. So that's what I mean by analytics. So there's no ambiguity on that again, because there are several type of analytics, right? You could have things like descriptive analytics. So descriptive analytics is basically showing data as is. That's what you do with visualization. You are showing the state of data currently. And then you have things like advanced, well, let me not go to advanced yet. You have things like predictive analytics. So predictive is basically trying to predict, use data, and then try to predict the future from the current state. So that is, in a lot of sense, it is outside the remit of a data analyst. That's what people that are into machine learning and data science do, because they're trying to predict, because at that point you begin to create models and use a lot of statistical methodology, right, to try and forecast or predict. So I'm just going to leave that by the side, right? We're focused on descriptive analytics because that's the primary role of a data analyst. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do those things. Yeah, you can go into predictive, you can even go into prescriptive if you want to, but it's important you know what your primary responsibility is as a data analyst. So the next thing you do after data cleaning is you go into data transformation. And this is what this means is you basically try to bring data into the structure. So this is where you start doing things around, you start handling things around data types. You talk about things like integer, talk about things like string, talk about things like date, and all those things, right? Why is data transformation important, right? You need to put your data in a particular sort of state or structure for it to create certain visuals for you. So a good example, right? If you're trying to do a simple trend analysis where you show the movement of revenue or whatever it is you're interested in seeing over a period of time, right? The primary sort of column you need to do that is a date, field. So if you have data, right, in a column that is not formatted as date, right, it will be difficult for you to create that trend line seamlessly. In a lot of tools, it will even give you the ability to drill down, right? So it's really key for you to have your data in that structure. And guess what? Most of the times when you get data, it's not going to be in the structure or in the type that you need it to be. You can get data and you look at the rules, they are all looking like dates, but the data type there that was set when they were doing data entry wasn't date. It could be general or something, right? So you need to ensure that you transform your data from the as is state into the state that you need it to work. There's a bit of data modeling when you do this, right? And for a data analyst, this is it's really at the elementary level, because when you talk about data modeling in its truest sense, from a analytics and engineering perspective, it is primarily the responsibility of a data engineer to create the models, right? If a data engineer create the models in a database for you, right? Or the create a data model and their data pipelines were created based on the data model, you won't have to worry about data modeling. All you need to do, right, is you bring your data into whatever business intelligence tool that you're using. And then all you do is simply connect and create the relationships. So all you do as a data analyst when it comes to data modeling is creating relationships. So you don't really worry about the core data modeling. That's the responsibility of a data engineer, right? So you talk about things like your logical data model, you talk about things like your entity relationship diagram, all those things. There are responsibilities of a data engineer. If you want to do data engineering, those are some of the things that you should look out for. But again, right, remember I said that I tailored this for a data analyst, right? So as a data analyst, your role is simple: get data, cleanse it, transform it, right? Create the relationships you need to create, and then go into your data visualization, right? You create your visuals and then you build your dashboard depending on the problem you have or depending on the ask that you have at hand. You create your reports. And then in doing that, right, you do it in a logical and consistent manner that creates what we call data storytelling. So data storytelling is not you going to tell stories, right? It's basically you trying to communicate to the business about data using the visuals that you've created. So in data storytelling, what you're doing is you're ensuring that your dashboards, right, are in such a state that someone can look at it and have a good flow. For example, if I have a dashboard that talks about revenue, right, it makes no sense for me to be seeing things around, let's say, HR in there, right? Because I'm talking about revenue. And even within revenue, right, you need to break it down to the components that are important for it. So let me give you an example, right? If you're working for a bank and the let's say the CFO, right, wants to create initiatives around, let's say, credit cards, but they want to understand the money they're getting from credit cards, right? Because if you want to create any initiative, you need to check your data and be sure that you're really going to make money from any initiative they're trying to bring, right? So your responsibility in that sense is to create a dashboard. I think there's some background noise. Sorry, can you go ahead, mute, please? Thank you. So your responsibility as a data analyst in that instance is to bring all the data. So when we go into this slide in more details, you would see the process that you go through, right, to run any project. But right now, I'm just telling you about the end product because I'm talking about the data storytelling. So in your dashboard, you're going to show all the variables, right, that are contributing to the revenue that relates to credit card. It makes no sense for you to have something around debit card in that dashboard because that's not what they want to see, right? So you need to be able to, first of all, understand what the ask is, right? And then create it in such a way that it flows. It needs to be done according to the problem. We'll talk about this in more detail when we go into the steps that you go through when you are running or working on a data project. So what are some of the skills that a data analyst should have? So before I go into this, right, if you joined late, the sort of arrangement that we had was that all questions will be asked at the end of this session. So if you have any question on any of the slides, just write it down. And then at some point, we would have a Q&A session where you can ask all your questions. But for now, I'll just go through the slides and then later on we'll take the questions. So what skills should data analysts have? So if you look at this slide, right, it's not heavy on tools or technology, right? I did that on purpose because I've realized that technology doesn't pay you, right? What pays you is the value, the value that you create. So as a business, right, no one is going to, let's say you are selling things, right? No one is going to sell things to you because you have a fancy page. No one is going to sell things to you because the user interface on your app or on your website is looking fantastic. No, people would only buy things from you when you are solving their problem, right? So the same logic applies to data analytics, right? Because just ask yourself, why should a company hire you, right? It's not because you can create dashboard. At the face of it, right? No one really need dashboards. Why do I need a dashboard, right? Why is that a need for me to pay you to come and work for me? So that's why I sort of put technology at the bottom of this slide and then sort of brought up all the things that are key for you to be an effective data analyst. So the first thing is that you need to be able to have a problem solving mindset. And this goes hand in hand with critical thinking. You need to, as a data analyst, you need to be able to understand problems and then get into solving those problems, because your dashboard, right, or your tool, whatever you are doing, needs to address a particular business problem. If it doesn't do that, right, no one is going to see you as being useful to them. So the from my experience, right, and with everything I've seen in this industry, the most important skill you need is your ability to solve people's problems. And we'll talk about this later, right? And on this, you need to be solving the problems of the right people. So depending on, again, your organization, if you're in consulting, you know that your clients are the people that you need to solve their problems, right? But if you're working in the industry, let's say you're working for maybe a fintech or an energy company, you report to someone, right? So you want to be interested in knowing what their problems are, right? And if their problems are linked to business problems, if you're able to do that, trust me, you're going to be in job, you're going to be in need, right, of people. People would always want to have you around because you're solving something that's very important to them. The next thing is effective communication. You can have the best of skills in this world. You can create the best of tools that actually solve the most problematic issues businesses have, right? But you won't be relevant if you're unable to communicate what you've done. I've been on projects where people create really good tools, right? There was this guy created a fantastic tool. The client loved it, but because he had a communication problem, he couldn't present his tool to the most important person. They had to bring in someone to explain the tool, explain the logic behind the tool, explain what the tool is doing, because the guy couldn't just communicate properly. So I see that when people come into this field, right, they spend a lot of time learning Python, learning R, jumping from one training course to the other, right? But they miss out on some of these really key skills. So communication is very important. And depending on where you were born and raised, right, you're going to have an accent, right? You need to ensure that you use that to your advantage, you use that effectively. So, I mean, whatever accent you have, right, the most important thing is people understand what you're saying. So you need to ensure that as you speak, people understand what you're saying. It's not about speaking with words that people won't understand, right? It's not about trying to fake some accent, right? For example, if you're in the UK, it's not about trying to necessarily speak the way people speak in the UK, right? It's really about speaking and people understanding what you are saying. That's one. And then two, it's also about, in this context, right? Communication is about you being able to explain the technical details, right, to people in plain English. No one, like from a business perspective, right? A CEO, a CFO, a director doesn't really care about data type. They don't care about data model. They don't care about data dictionary. They don't even want to know what it is, right? Because in the end, those things don't bring money to them, right? So you need to be able to explain what those things do, right? And why they are important to the work that you do. So that's on communication. The next one that is very key is stakeholder management. As this is very key, especially if you're interested in going to consulting. You're going to, because the nature of consulting is that you have a lot of projects with different clients, right? And then they pay you to deliver the project, right? So you need to ensure that they are comfortable with the work that you're doing and you are delivering according to like the standard that you promised them. But then from an industry perspective, this is also very important because it involves you managing one, the person you report to directly, and also the person you report to also reports to. So it's the whole hierarchy, right? And in a lot of instances, it might not even be direct. It could be that you'll probably be outsourced to, let's say, maybe a credit risk team, right? Because they have a need of a data analyst. So your ability to go there, right, and then explain what you're doing to them, manage their expectations, right, and ensure that they understand what you are doing to the point that they give you a good feedback or they give you a good nod, right, is the most important thing. So I've spoken about storytelling. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but if we have questions around storytelling, I will take that later. The next thing is data extraction. So you need to be able to know how to get your data. We spoke about this a few minutes ago. The next one is data transformation and data cleaning. I explained this also. So here I sort of introduced a few tools. Well, I only put Power Query and SQL anyway. It was intentional, right? In the sense that I noticed that when people join this field, they spend so much time debating which tool is better. You hear things like Power BI is better than Tableau, Python is better than R. Don't get involved in any of that, to be honest. That's my view because it's not helpful. What is really helpful for you to do at this stage is to get a few tools, right? And that's why I listed a handful there. So if you sit down as a data analyst, right, you understand Excel and Power BI. That's why I put Power Query in there because you have your Power Query in Excel as well. If you understand how to use Excel properly, know the essential functions, know how to use them really well, go to SQL, know how to use SQL really well, right? In terms of data transformation and data cleaning, you can add any other ETL tool. You could probably learn Alteryx, but if you even just learn Excel and SQL, you are in a good spot to basically start your data analytics journey because most of the tools, right, that are in the market around ETL. ETL basically means extract, transform, and load. It's more heavy on the data engineering side. But remember earlier I said if you find yourself in an organization that is not sort of mature in their data ecosystem, you wouldn't necessarily have a data engineer, or you would be sort of required to play the role of a data engineer as well as a data analyst. So that's why I put ETL tool there. But if you learn Excel and SQL, right, from purely a data analyst perspective, you are really good to go to start working. And also any other tool that you will learn, right, from a data transformation and cleansing perspective, it would be a walk in the park for you, because these tools would give you the basic and fundamental knowledge that you need, right? And from what I have seen in the industry, right, what you really need is the fundamentals, because guess what? You can't keep up with the tools, right, in the market. There's always going to be some new shiny tool, right? Don't bother about that, right? Just ensure that you really understand the basics, and then whenever you need to use a new tool, you'll be able to upskill pretty fast because you have a basic understanding of this of this basic tools. Let me share a good example with you. I recently started a project where I was supposed to use a tool that I had never used before, that I had never had in all my years of being in this field, right? But because I have used a lot of tools, right, it was very easy for me to pick it up in a few days. So I kid you not, there is no ETL tool out there in the market that would take me more than a week to learn. And why is that so? It's because I spent time really understanding the basics and the fundamentals. So it's really easy for me to leverage off that knowledge whenever I'm learning a new tool. Yeah. So let's jump into the next one, is BI development. I spoke about this earlier on. And also for this, you just need to know one BI tool. If Power BI is the one that is very easy for you to learn, you know Power BI. Trust me, moving from Power BI to Tableau would not take a lot from you, but you need to understand Power BI properly. All I'm saying is you need to pick a few tools, understand it to the core. What I mean by understand is don't just go to a training session, someone is saying, click here, you are doing it without knowing why you're doing those things, right? You need to be able to question what you're doing. That's how you really learn. So you need to ask, why am I doing this? Is there another way of doing this, right? If you're able to answer those questions, trust me, you would understand the tool very well, and you'll be in a good spot to learn any other tool down the line. Okay, so what does a high-performing data analyst look like? So this is very key, because if you work in certain markets, right? Let's say the UK or the US and even Canada, right? You need to be really performing to keep your job. So if you want to keep your job, right, you need to be a good performer at the very least. But don't aim to be a good performer. Aim to be a high performer, right? And from a data perspective, what does that person look like, right? Like we've been discussing all this while, it has to be someone that can solve data problems, that directly solves business problems, right? I explained this a few minutes ago, but let me just use like 2 minutes to explain it again. So for every project that you do, right? Or let me even take a step back and look at it from a wider perspective, right? You look at companies, technology companies like Microsoft, like OpenAI, churning out tools, right? But then you find that sometimes a lot of those tools won't be bought. Let me give you a not so good example, right? Like Apple. Apple made their VR headset recently. Not a lot of people bought that headset. In fact, it had a really poor sales, and a lot of people even returned what they bought. What does that tell you? It means that people were not satisfied with the product, so they returned it. If they were satisfied, I mean, like people are satisfied with the iPhone, right? People go buy iPhone because it's solving a need for people, whatever that need is, right? So that logic applies to data analytics as well. You have work only because there is a business need for you to be working. So the way to stay in your job, right, is to ensure that you work on problems that directly solves business problems, right? So the next one would be about communication. I mentioned this earlier on. A high performer is someone that is able to clearly communicate to stakeholders, right, and take them along throughout the project. It is not, a high performer is not necessarily the best coder, is not necessarily the best person that can create the most beautiful dashboard, right? Like we've spoken about this, I think quite a lot of time now. It's someone that can really communicate the progress. It's someone that can communicate the risk, the problems, or any challenges on the project. So I'm just going to go to what a typical data analytics project looks like. So like I have been saying all this while, I think at this point I might be a broken record. Every data analytics project starts with a business problem or a business need or a business objective, right? So when you have that need and then someone says, yep, we need to do this, then someone is going to say, we need to get a data analyst, right? For example, a CFO says, I need a dashboard, and then maybe the financial controller will just look at it. I don't have any data analyst. We need to get data analyst, right? And then you come in. The first thing you do is requirements gathering, and that's basically you trying to understand the business problem and the things that you need to solve that problem. That's what requirements gathering is. So with the example that I give in terms of trying to understand the revenue from a credit card in a bank, so what you would do in requirements gathering would be to go to the business stakeholders, the owner of that project, and understand what are the key metrics, right? What are the key variables? You get a list of those variables, right? You get a list of the data, right? So this variable, let's say variable A, where can I find that data? You're going to note that down. So that's what you do in requirements gathering. You try to understand all the things that you need to do the project. Then you go into looking for data. When you get your data, you basically start your development. So when you do your development to the point where you have a minimum viable product, you start doing testing. And testing is basically you going back to the business to say, yep, we've created this minimum viable product. Can you look at it, try to use it and see if it satisfies or if it solves your problem? And then they will give you feedback, probably go back. If it's all good, you go straight into deployment. That's never the case. I've never seen an instance where you do testing and from testing, you jump into deployment immediately without going back to tweak some things, right? So when you deploy, if you're successful, you go into a state we call hypercare. So that's basically you supporting the client and giving them any guidance they need, any manual that they need in order to use your tool properly. And then the final phase is the handover, where you hand over the project to the sponsor, and then you go. This is majorly from a consulting perspective, right? If you're working in an industry, your hypercare is probably your day job, right? So when you deploy, you would still be in the environment because it's the company that you work for, right? You'll still be there supporting, adding features from time to time. But then if you work in consulting, right, that client is not going to be your client forever. Sometimes you stay with clients for 2 years, for 3 years, but there's always an end date, right? So you always have to plan for that end date to say, when I'm leaving this client, What do I need to keep for them in terms of manual, in terms of guidance, so that they can properly use the tool without a problem? Okay. So what are the challenges that data analysts face? First one you would face is that you won't get the data that you need. I've never worked on any project where immediately I go looking for data, I find the data I'm looking for. You never get that. So what's the solution to that? You always have to, so that's why critical thinking is important. So you always have to think towards your end goal, right? And always communicate the challenges that you're facing. So if the problem here is that the data doesn't exist, right? You go back to the stakeholders to say, this data you're looking for does not exist, right? What's the way forward? Can we use this other data to extrapolate from it? Are you happy for us to do that, right? You wouldn't just say, yeah, they were looking for data around credit card. We didn't have, or let's use debit card data for them. Surely that's similar, right? No, don't do that. Don't ever do that. And always go back to stakeholders to get direction from them, because they are really the owners of the data and the solutions that you are building. It's not your solution. It's not your data. You're going to have loads of data quality issues. On this one, right? We can probably spend 10 sessions explain the problems that you're going to have in data quality. Data would always not be in a state that you need it to be. And just to digress a bit, this is going to be a big issue for all the talk and hype around AI. It's a major pain. I have seen it happening with a lot of clients that want to deploy AI, but then they start doing it and they realize they're getting rubbish results. And then they look back like, oh, we have data quality problems. So we need to fix that first. So you're always going to meet this. And then the final one is managing stakeholders. I spoke about this. You're always going to need to, it's difficult. You're always going to need to do it. And then the sort of final challenge that you would have is you will need to constantly be learning. If you're looking for a job where you don't want to learn and you do the same thing over and over again, right? This is not the job for you. But if you're looking for something where you want to be challenged, you want to be thinking all the time, right? This is exactly your job, because you would need to learn a lot. There'll be loads of new tools coming out. There will be new methodologies that you need to learn. So you always need to be learning. Okay. So the final thing I would like to speak about is what are the things that you need to do. I think I don't have it on this slide, but let me just talk pretty fast on it. What are the things that you need to do when you're starting? So when you're starting your data analytics career, the first thing you need is a community. The good thing you're already in this community, and trust me, you're in the best hands. Idiri is one of the best professionals I've worked with, so you're in good hands. You have people like Marita here, you have people like Sheun. Trust me, you are covered on all fronts. And so you've sort of ticked that box. The next one is for you to basically start learning the fundamentals I spoke about. You need to be rooted in the foundations of data cleansing, data quality, data transformation, right? And a bit of data modeling, understanding data types, right? You need to be really rooted in those things. And the tools that you're going to learn it really well. Don't learn tools because the instructor is saying select star this and you're writing select star. Why am I doing select star? Why is it star? Why is it not hash? You need to be able to question and get clarity. That's how you really learn. The next thing is you need to build in public. Don't do your thing in isolation. Build and then publish your projects on, you have GitHub, just do it there, post it on LinkedIn or anywhere else you want to post it, but build public, let people see what you're doing. You never know, someone can just bump on your LinkedIn like, oh, I didn't need this in my company, and then they reach out to you, right? So do that. The next thing is you probably need to get one certificate, to be honest. If you can find one good place, I'm pretty sure there will be plans along the line for something like that, right? You need to get one certificate around, I mean, this is solely from a data analyst perspective, right? Around data analytics, get just one is good enough, and then go and start hunting, right? Do your job hunting. And I'm pretty sure if you do these things, you would have a fantastic career.